I think it takes that pressure off if I know that, oh, it doesn't matter, I don't have to make an image today, but I can stand and enjoy it and just watch. And I think by watching and looking, it feeds other ideas, doesn't it? You know that another time you go down there, something that you hadn't even realised that you'd noticed, a bit of rock or a certain stretch of beach, what the sun's doing at that time of year. All of these things are going in, even if you're not aware of it at the time. And somehow, when the conditions all come together, you can pull all those ideas out because you've done your groundwork without knowing it. It's like doing your research.
Welcome to the She Clicks Women in Photography podcast. I'm Angela Nicholson, and I'm the founder of She Clicks, which is a community for female photographers. In these podcasts, I talk with women in the photographic industry to hear about their experiences, what drives them, and how they got to where they are now. In this episode, we hear from Lucie Averill. Lucie is a landscape photographer based in Cornwall, where she's inspired by the ever-changing light, wild weather, and quiet coastal scenes near her home. After many years as a primary school teacher, Lucie made the leap to focus fully on her photography, creating calm, reflective images that capture a sense of space, solitude, and stillness. Hi Lucie, thank you for joining me today on the She Clicks Women in Photography podcast. It's really lovely to have the opportunity to chat with you.
Thank you. It's great to meet you too for the first time.
Oh, it's lovely. Thank you. Now, I understand that you originally worked as a primary school teacher. Were you always interested in photography?
Not always. I mean, I've always had a camera, but it was just point and shoot holiday photographs and film. I didn't really know what I was doing. But it was when I had my first digital camera that I became quite intrigued, actually, because you could see the image straight away. And from there on, I guess that was about 2003, it gradually built into a passion. Obviously, I was working full time, so it was just in my spare time, but it became more and more important to me as the years went on. And as I sort of tried to develop my skills. And I mean, it's just gone in a way that I hadn't expected, really. So I haven't always been interested, but it's just become a real passion.
It's interesting that the transition to digital technology really kind of, I don't know if inspired you, is that quite the right word, triggered you to take more interest in photography?
I think so, because it was the immediacy of it. I mean, I know some people say how exciting it is. They send a film roll off and some weeks later they get it back. I didn't find it frustrating. I didn't really think about it, but it was just the fact that I could see what I'd taken and I could use what I could see on screen to work out what I might do next time. And I began to realise that actually that was the important part for me, that I could monitor it quite closely, not having to wait. And I guess, it's a time when you could see it on the computer, you could see it big, see all the flaws. And it did trigger me much more so than film.
Yeah. That's interesting because I started with film photography as well. And I used to I shot a lot of transparency film. When you put it on on a light box, it's like looking at a stained glass window and it is beautiful. But I always felt a certain amount of anxiety around film because it wasn't a cheap medium, or it still isn't. And so there was a cost associated with experimenting or bracketing. Whereas actually, as you say, you can look at your results in the viewfinder or on the back of the camera and make changes and then try again or do all sorts of different variations.
Absolutely. And my brother is a film photographer, although he was the one that got me into digital. And I could see the hours and the expense. I knew I would never, ever have the time to have a darkroom myself. And I guess it put me off. And I know that sending it off to a lab, you don't always get the results you want. And so I think that's why I had more control over it. I could look at it, I could develop it, I could use my own digital darkroom as and when I could without having to worry about expense. As you say, it doesn't matter if you take 100 pictures and you only end up with one, but I used to find the same. It was just too expensive, really, to have film.
So how did you make the change to a career in photography?
Well, it was a really gradual process. It's not something that I ever really intended. I'd been teaching for a long, long time, loved it, but it was quite stressful. And once my children had grown up, and I thought, actually, now it's my time. So I gave up the teaching job, didn't really have anything to go to, but I was lucky enough I was able to have the time to develop pardon the pun, to actually, hone my skills.
Yeah.
And when I first gave up work, I was photographing artists' work for them. My husband's a painter, and I'd always photographed his work so that he could use them for catalogues and what have you. And that's what I was doing first of all. And it was great. I had a couple of galleries that I'd shoot for friends, friends of friends, and it was a really good learning curve. But it wasn't really what I wanted to do all the time. As my own skills, as I furthered my own skills, I realised I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be able to print my own work, and I had I was lucky enough to go on a printing course with Adrian Beasley. And that kind of transformed the way I printed completely in just one weekend. And so that's what I concentrated on, developing my own work and my own printing skills. And then I happened to be out walking just in the town of Marazion. Usually have a set route that we go around, but went a different way, and happened to see this little gallery with a note in the window saying they were looking for a 2D artist to be part of the cooperative. And I thought, oh no, I'm not up to that. I can't do that. And I had chatted it over with family and friends. They said, no, give it a go, give it a go. So it was a case of feel the fear and do it anyway. And I did apply for it, and I got the position. And then, of course, I just started in the February before we had all the lockdowns, which wasn't great. But it was so nice because I enjoy being part of a little group. It's not just you on show, it's other people as well. And then it kind of snowballed from there, really. Another friend asked me if I'd put work in her gallery, and I did. I still have work there. And then I started to have exhibitions, sometimes by myself, sometimes in a group. And as I say, it was totally unintentional. It was just a bit of luck, being in the right place at the right time, and being open to new challenges, really.
Well, that's really interesting. I think there's quite a lot to unpack there. Your husband is an artist.
Yes.
And you've got several friends who are artists. Do you think that being immersed in that kind of world helped you take the step?
I would say absolutely it did, because I know, some people, they say that if they're out with their families get a bit cross if they've got their cameras and, they're not terribly understanding. I'm really lucky if we go anywhere, husband, my son or my daughter, it's, oh, you might like that, mum. You go over there and do that. We'll go off and have a coffee, or we'll go off and have a wander. And they just don't mind. They're very, very supportive. And as you say, having lots of artist friends, my husband as well, I've seen it from the other side. I've never thought it would be something that I'd be part of, that creative scene. But there is that understanding there and that support. And if I need to, if I've made some work and I'm not sure about it, I know I can talk to my friends, my husband, and I get a fair appraisal, a fair criticism. And we have this joke, my husband says, oh, do you want marks out of 10? It was just a joke, but if I get an 8 or a 9, sometimes a 10, it's quite good. But it's just that sort of feeling comfortable that I can be creative, and I've got the support. We've got books around us, we've got pictures around us. All my friends are very creative, and I guess I've absorbed more than I really thought. My husband laughs because if we're out walking and I'm talking about the light or this, that, and the other, he says having conversations in the last few years that we would never have had initially, because I didn't see things in the same way. So it has helped me very much.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And I think it's very easy to underestimate the impact of somebody sort of not being too concerned about how long you're going to take when you're out with your camera, because so it might only be a fraction of a second that you make the exposure, but actually that's just the starting point, and then you sort of see different angles and you want to explore something, and you need to be sucked into the scene, don't you? And sometimes you can do that before you press the shutter release, but other times you need to warm up to it, take a few shots, give it a go.
Absolutely. And, I think that's possibly why I like photographing by myself, is because I might stand in the same place for 20 minutes, half an hour. If I want to be there an hour, sometimes I can. And I'm not worried that somebody else is fed up or bored. As I say, my husband would go off and grab a coffee, or he'll sit and he'll just think about his own work. He's able to just switch like that. Whereas if I'm out with people who aren't photographers, they do get impatient. You know, because it is that looking and waiting, and
Yeah.
is that the right light? It might change. That cloud might move over, and I can lose hours just watching and waiting, really. And not everybody is able to put up with that.
Especially, I think if they don't know what you're looking for, you say, "Oh, I'm waiting for the light." What do you mean? You know,
I know. Well, it's up there.
and it's not just necessarily the sun coming out from behind a cloud. It's till that cloud goes over somewhere else as well, and all sorts of things.
And also, yes, as you say, a few seconds to click the shutter, but it's all the work that goes into it, the thought behind it, waiting for the cloud, waiting for waiting for people to clear out of the scene, or for the water to be doing something. And yeah, it is something that you can't rush, not if you're going to take anything other than a snapshot, really.
Yeah. Did there come a point that you remember where you started to refer to yourself as a photographer or as a professional photographer?
It took a long time. Again, I can remember somebody saying to me, "What do you do?" And I said, I was a teacher. I'm now a photographer. And I felt, yes, I felt as if I shouldn't be saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a long, long while. And even now, people say, "What do you do?" "Oh, I'm a photographer. I used to be a teacher." It's almost as if you can't quite give one up and
Yeah.
believe that I'm the other. It has taken a long while.
Did you ever, I mean, it sounds like it was a very organic process, but did you ever, or have you at any point started to kind of plan your career progression, or think about what your aims are?
When I joined the gallery down the road as part of the cooperative, and I realised from hearing people chat to me about my work when they came in, I thought, well, actually, it would be nice to exhibit, because the gallery is little, so maybe have a bigger space to exhibit. And that's, I would say, was possibly the only real planning I've had. I don't sort of think to myself, "Oh, I'm going to try and get into this gallery or that gallery." That doesn't really cross my mind. I'm quite happy for it to be organic, because all the while I'm enjoying it, I feel it's probably taking me down the path I want to go down. Whereas if I set myself so many goals and then fail to achieve them, it'll just give me a sense of failure. So I'm happy to go with the flow, but I am doing what I want to do. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just don't want huge plans. I mean, for example, I have worked out with a friend that we would like to maybe exhibit more together. So if you like, that is a plan, but it's not a hard plan. And it might be that we end up with one exhibition, we might end up with two, we don't know. But I just give myself gentle targets and hope that I, can work my way towards them.
So you have a stated aim and you'll look out for opportunities to achieve that, but not necessarily say, and it's got to be done by October the 9th, blah, blah, blah.
No. I think for so many years I had, in my teaching, there were so many deadlines, so many things you had to do. I don't want to put myself under that pressure, really, because I don't need to be under that pressure. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And yeah, definitely not.
I think that's something that comes with a bit of experience, isn't it? Just self-knowledge, knowing what you like, knowing that if you do certain things, it will make you happy, and that's good.
Absolutely, because, I see younger photographers coming through, brilliant photographers. They're obviously very career driven. They need to make a really good living from what they're doing, and it's hard. And they have that drive that perhaps as you get a little bit older and finish one career, go into another, you can be a bit easier on yourself. And I'm still achieving what I want to achieve, so that suits me, really.
Yeah.
Perhaps if I was a bit younger, maybe I'd have more of the drive and more of the ambition. I don't know. I'm not a very competitive person, actually, so I'm quite happy just sort of going along at the level that I like to set challenges, but not to make myself feel too stressed about it.
Okay. Now, you mentioned you went on a printing course that really changed how you print overnight. And I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit more about that.
Yes. because a lot of the work I do is about reflections and clouds and the sea. I don't know why, but I'd got into my head that, I always use a luster paper, and that's how it looked in print. And when I went on the course with Adrian, he made me really think about the paper I was using and how it would affect the actual outcome of the image. And he also talked about how you have to almost process your image because of the paper and of the profile and what have you, something that I hadn't really considered before, and how everything has to be calibrated. And he suggested to me that I use a matte paper. And kind of inwardly, I will admit my eyes were rolling, thinking, oh no, it's, how can a matte paper? I'm sure it's not going to work, not going to look good. But actually, as soon as it came out of the printer, I could see the difference. There was a richness to it. And I just, from that point, I really, really fell in love with printing. I like printing for the sake of printing, just seeing it come out. I just love it. But it was the whole idea of where everything has to be calibrated so it all comes together and it looks on paper as you want it to look. Not, oh dear, well, the printer's given me that, I'll just have to accept that. And I think it did definitely improve my printing from the first day that I'd been on the course, really, and hopefully building on it all the time, because I think to see your work printed makes a huge difference to just seeing it on the computer. There is something very special about it. Even if you only make little small prints that you put in a photograph album, it is important, because it's something with computers that lots of us have lost. I mean, family photographs stop at a certain point when I wasn't sending films off anymore. And I realised that that's probably lots of people have just got their photographs on a phone or something. So print them off. It is good to have them.
Yeah, it's a very different experience, I think, flipping through a photograph album or a photo book that you've made. It's a really pleasurable thing.
It is.
Do you always now photograph with the intention of making a print?
Usually, yes. I mean, I have got photographs that I haven't printed off, but it might just be that I'm not ready to print it yet. But I think actually the way I process my images, even for social media, I probably got the print in my mind, because I know I process my images are light, because that's how I tend to print. So yes, in the back of my mind, it's always, would this make a good print? Might not be now. It might be, if I've got it might be with a body of work that it matches with. I might not print it straight away. And I keep photographs quite a long time before I process them. It's not often that I process straight away. And I like looking back and thinking, actually, that would make a really nice print. Or no, that one I thought was good. No, I wouldn't do anything with that now. So it's always at the back of my mind about making a print.
Is that delay because of the practicalities of life, or is it because you like to give them some time so you come back to them fresh?
No, I like to come back to them fresh, because I can remember hearing Rachel Talabart saying the same thing, that you get all excited when you've taken a photograph and you think it's great, and actually over time you might change your mind. So there's definitely that, and I think sometimes my tastes might change, or as I said, I might be actually working towards a body of work that I hadn't considered at the time that I'd made the image, and so it didn't seem to fit. Whereas, so for example, I made an image, I printed an image fairly recently, quite an abstract one, a boat one, where the buoy was reflected in the water and was all broken up, quite fractured. And I realised that I actually had other images that I'd made a couple of years before that would be part of a really good little project. And so it didn't, those photographs didn't call out to me at the time, but I knew I had them, and I knew that it would fit the body of work. So your tastes change, what you're trying to work towards changes. So, it's good to wait sometimes. I don't always wait 2 years though.
So would it be fair to say that your primary income source from photography is print sales?
Yes, I think it is. Yeah, because I'm now in the 2 galleries and running exhibitions as well. I do make quite a lot of print sales, so that's good.
Great. Now, you mentioned you're part of a cooperative. I think that's the Marazion Gallery, is it?
That's right, yes.
Yeah, that's run by the artists. How much of a commitment is that in terms of, because obviously somebody's got to be there when the gallery is open and there's all sorts of admin and things.
We're open 7 days a week, so that is a huge commitment. But because there are usually 9 of us, we're looking for another member at the moment, but so it means that once every 9 days, I have to be in there, which actually isn't too bad. And also, everyone's pretty good. If you want to go away or if you've got something on, you just swap your shifts, and everyone's really helpful. Meeting maybe once every 4 to 6 weeks. It's not onerous at all, and I really enjoy being part of a team where you're working together to promote each other's work, really. I think, going back to the teaching days, I always enjoyed being part of a team. I work well like that, and it's good. I think it gives you confidence as well, actually working amongst other creatives and having those chats when people come into the gallery. I would never imagined I would have done that, but I do enjoy it very much.
Is it a mixture of artists? Are they all using different medium?
Yeah. I mean, in Marazion Gallery, we've got ceramicists, mixed media artist, a painter, we've got glass, jewellery. So there is a whole mix of it. In my gallery that I'm in Porthleven, I'm with another painter. So that's different again. But yeah, it's good fun, really good fun.
Which gallery is it in Porthleven?
It's Steelworks, which is in the shipyard. Tiny little space. I've only got, a little corner, but actually it does really well for me, and people come in. The conversations you have are really nice because, if your prints are just left on the computer or it's just social media, you don't really know what people think. And whilst I don't make images just for what people think, it's quite nice when I think, oh, somebody likes that enough to have it on their wall and they want to know how it was made or, what paper it's on. And it is, I really enjoy being in both the galleries.
Great. That sounds really lovely. I've been to Porthleven many times. It's a beautiful place, and I've been into several of the galleries and things there. It's really nice. I meant to ask you, do you always now use the same paper for your prints, or do you have is there a range that you switch between?
I tend to stick to 2 papers that are actually very, very similar. I use the Photospeed Natural Soft Textured Bright White because it suits my work. The brightness of it suits my work, and I use the Harnamuli Photo Rag, again the bright white. So when I print on either of them, I can process the same. It's just that some people say, "Oh, I'd like that on the Harnamula," because they've heard of that one. But I use them both equally. But I don't. I have got a more of a luster. I think I can't remember the name of it, but I don't like it on my work. My work doesn't look as good on that. I don't think. Perhaps if I did more black and white, it would suit that. But for me at the moment, it is definitely the cotton rag that it works best for.
Okay. Do you do your own framing as well, or do you get someone else to do that?
I have my frames made, but I have them untreated because I don't know whether I want a lime waxed one or if I want a black one, depending on the work. And also, I have some clients who always want a black frame or some who always want a lime waxed frame. So, although I buy the frames made, I do end up framing it myself and having to stain the frames or wax the frames, which does take a lot of time. I do get help. My husband's very good at that, but at the moment, that's the way I'm working. Just because otherwise, if I send it off to have it framed, it makes it even more expensive, and it is a consideration.
Yeah,
if you want to sell your work, it's got to be affordable.
That's true. Thinking about your photography, how do you decide on any particular day what you're going to photograph? Does it come down to, is it always the weather? Is it sometimes your mood, or you just suddenly think, oh, I haven't been to wherever for a while, I'm going to go there?
It can be a mix, really, because, if it's a bright blue sky day, I'm probably not going to go down to the beach because I like the moody clouds and that wouldn't work. However, if it's a blue sky day, it might be a good time to go to the harbour. Sometimes it depends on time as well. If I'm due in the gallery all day, if sunset or sunrise is early or late, then I can go down to the beach afterwards. But Yeah, it just depends. Really, I would say that weather is probably the one that I would look at most of all, because I do like a moody cloud, and it's not worth going out if it's just going to be blue sky. I wouldn't get the images I'm looking for, but then I do go to the harbour.
Yeah. It's nice to have the options for different weather conditions.
I know. I'm hugely lucky living here. We are miles away from anywhere, but I know to be able to keep going back to the same location, it doesn't matter if the camera doesn't actually come out of the bag, because I know that I can go the next day, or, a couple of days' time. I know that when I go somewhere new, it takes me a while to get my eye in, and I sense sometimes that desperation of, I've only got 3 days. I need to make the most of where I am. And obviously people are like that. If they come to Cornwall, they've only got a week or whatever, and they don't have the right weather. So, yeah, I would say I am very, very lucky living here, but I do go back to similar places a lot, because I think you get your eye in, don't you? You know exactly not exactly what you're going to get, because it's always changing, but you have an idea of what you can make an image of, depending on the conditions, the tide, which part of the beach, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you get an idea of the basic shapes and forms, but actually, as you say, that the sea and the sky are infinitely variable. So good for the soul, actually, just watching them, I think.
I think it takes that pressure off if I know that, oh, it doesn't matter, I don't have to make an image today, but I can stand and enjoy it and just watch. And I think by watching and looking, it feeds other ideas, doesn't it? You know that another time you go down there, something that you hadn't even realised that you'd noticed, a bit of rock, or a certain stretch of beach, what the sun's doing at that time of year. All of these things are going in, even if you're not aware of it at the time. And somehow, when the conditions all come together, you can pull all those ideas out, because you've done your groundwork without knowing it. It's like doing your research.
Yeah.
Of knowing how to make an image.
It's interesting, because if you were looking at it coldly, perhaps as a business person, then you might say, okay, well, you're in a popular tourist area. There's a constant supply of potential clients. You've got these images, just keep printing them. But there's also a desire as an artist, as a photographer, to go out and capture new images and create different prints.
Absolutely. When I first joined the gallery down the road in Marazion, I assumed that people would only want to buy photographs of St Michael's Mount, of which I do have lots. But actually, what was really gratifying was that it was my other work that people seemed to enjoy, because perhaps they hadn't seen some of it before. It was a little bit different, maybe. And I really like that, because although I do still photograph St Michael's Mount, I don't very often, because it is one of the most photographed places in the country, isn't it?
Yeah.
So for me, to be able to do the photography I want to do is really important. I don't want somebody to say, I want you to photograph this, or you can't be in the gallery. Fortunately, that's not the case. And what's really interesting is that some of my more abstract boat reflection work is some of my most popular work for sales, which I'm really thrilled about and really surprised about. But it just allows me to do what I want to do and not have to, just produce work of a certain kind. Gives you that confidence.
Do you ever run workshops?
I have run workshops in the past, and I know lots of people assume, oh, you used to be a teacher, that's probably what you're going to do. But I don't now, and I don't advertise. I'm not saying I won't ever run them, but I think having spent so many years where I had to, meet targets, get children through certain exams and SATs and what have you, I've decided that I don't want to put myself under pressure to, if somebody's paying money, you want to get them some shots that they're going to be really happy with. And I think there are other people doing it better than I'm doing it, put it that way. So I'm not intending to run them at the moment. And I did enjoy the ones I did run, but I just want to do my own work now, really.
Fair enough. I think that's fine. Now, you mentioned sunrise and sunset earlier, and it's a bit of a burning issue in the podcast. Do you have a preference for photographing at sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise is good. I like the colours at sunrise. They seem to be gentler and it's quieter, bearing in mind that I live in one of the most, touristy areas. So sunrise is a good time to go out. Having said that, sunset also on some of the beaches down here, the light, that last bit of light is quite incredible. Again, I'm usually often the only one down there. So I'm split. I'm absolutely split. And depending on the time of year, because it starts to get a bit brutal, doesn't it? This time of year, sort of going out for sunrise.
Yeah.
So I am split. But I suppose in the winter months, sunrise is definitely the best.
Yeah, like you say, if you're looking at the dawn time and it says 6 o'clock, that's not too bad. But then you think, oh, but I've got to get out, I've got to get up. So that starts to get a bit brutal. And when I think it was getting light at about 4:30 this morning. So, that's getting a bit serious.
It is, yeah. I mean, I just have to know my limitations, really. If I'm going to be up at 3 a.m, I'm not going to be fit for much if I've got to be in the gallery the next day. And I know that in the winter months, it's easier to do that. And the light actually is even more exquisite. So I'm not too bothered about it. But a sunset, this time of year, it's still getting quite late, isn't it? And in the height of the summer, I could be down on the beach still at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night because we just get that last bit of light.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be a very long day if you've done a sunrise as well. Don't think you'd manage it.
That's true. Yes. What about the tide? Do you have a preference for an incoming or outgoing tide?
I prefer an outgoing tide, just because obviously you get that clear sand.
Yeah.
And that's really a lot of my landscape, my coastal work is about the reflections in the wet sand. So if you've got like a clean slate as it's going out, also for safety wise, for safety reasons, it's easier on an outgoing tide. Although I did, I don't know if you've heard, but I did have a little incident some years ago now where it was an outgoing tide, and I thought everything was okay because the waterline was a long way down, and I was reaching in my bag for a filter, and this rogue wave came up and completely knocked me off my seat.
Oh no!
Camera on the tripod.
Oh,
yeah, it all went underwater. We all went swimming. So it has made me very, very wary.
Yeah.
And I do prefer an outgoing tide, and knowing my escape route as well is always important, just in case. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point because you tend to think of it being a steady progression out, but sometimes those waves can surprise you.
They do, and there's every 7th or 10th wave, isn't it? That's meant to be a rogue one, but this one just came hurtling up the beach, and it just made you realise how careful you have to be. So safety is always the important thing now.
Yes, very good point. Now, do you have any advice for anyone who's thinking about turning their photography into a business?
I would say photograph what you really love, because I think the passion will come through in the images. If you're just photographing because you think they might sell, I'm not sure that works. I think probably you might have to have another source of income as well when you're getting going, because it is difficult. And if you're just relying on internet sales, I would imagine that's difficult unless you're really, really well established. I do have a few internet sales, but I have more sales from people seeing it in the flesh. So again, try and find venues where you can maybe have your work on show, because if people can see the quality of it, they are more likely to order a print maybe. And the other thing is, as I started out photographing artists' works, maybe find another way that you can use your photography that might earn you the bread and butter, whilst you can pursue the more creative side of it as well. I think with any self-employment, you probably have to have lots of things bubbling away, don't you? Rather than just you don't have all your eggs in one basket, I think.
Yeah, good tip. Right, so I think that's a great time to go to 6 from She Clicks. I've got 10 questions from She Clickers, and I'd love you to answer 6 questions, please, by picking numbers from 1 to 10. So if you could let me have your first number, please.
Number 1.
Okay, so where are your favourite UK coastal locations outside of Cornwall? That was asked by several people.
Well, I was a student in Brighton for 5 years before we moved to Cornwall, and I really love going back to that part of the coast. As a student, I didn't have a car, so I didn't get round to lots of the other areas. I would really like to explore more. I do know Brighton, but, places like West Wittering. I've started to look at the Kent coastline a little bit more just because my sister-in-law lives up there. But I don't get to spend lots and lots of time there, but I do love that part of the coast as well. It's different to here. Also, Scotland. I mean, again, it's so far away from here. I don't get there very often, but the Scottish coast, the west coast, is just beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, so can I have your second number, please?
Number 3.
Number 3. Do you go out with a vision of what you want to create, or do you wait and see what presents itself? And a couple of people asked that, Paula and Marianne.
I think when I first started making work, I would probably have an idea of what I hoped to photograph, possibly because I might have been researching work or seen in magazines, or I'd like to shoot something like that. Now, I find I tend to respond, I want to respond more to what I find when I'm there. I mean, obviously, to some extent, if I'm looking at a high tide, I might photograph in the harbour, so that'll be different. Or if I've got an outgoing tide and I'm down on the beach, I'm looking for certain sorts of reflections. But I do like to respond to what's around me, and that's why I spend so long standing around looking and waiting for that sort of inspiration, see what's happening around me. Because quite often, you might go down there, you get the shot that you think, okay, that I might have planned, but it's when I'm packing up or when I'm walking away because I'm going back to my car that something else catches my eye, and I need to be ready to respond to that. And I think I have become better at that. It's the same when you go somewhere new. You have to be able to respond because you don't know the area as well. You don't know what you're going to get. So being able to, we talk about the wrong weather. There isn't really a wrong weather. It's just what you have to photograph in that weather, isn't it? You have to be able to adapt to it. And I think I have become more adaptable as I've gone on.
If someone asked you whether you would like to join them on a beach you've not explored, or they join you on a beach you know very well, which would you prefer to go with?
I think I'd probably like to go somewhere new, actually, with somebody who knows it. Because, it's lovely being in Cornwall, but it is a long way from anywhere. And so, I don't get to explore other beaches in quite as much depth. And that would be really nice to see somebody else's. And equally, if somebody was down here, I'm happy to show them sort of places, but I tend to have just a few places that I go to. So somebody else's knowledge is always really, really good to have, isn't it? Share their experiences.
Yeah. So can I have your third number, please?
Number 7.
Number 7. How do you take care of your kit at the coast? So several people asked that, and you've mentioned a disaster that you had. So, obviously, hopefully avoid that kind of thing.
How do I take care of my kit? Well, I always keep my bag on my back. So I always I have a bag that slides across and opens at the front. I never put my bag down, which is probably why my back's so bad. Because again, you can get that rogue wave, or anything can happen really. You could, so I don't put it down. The other thing is, I do keep lots of cloths in my bag, and I have a little rain cover, just a plastic thing, but it works really well if it's needed. I use filters. I still use my original Lee filters set. So I have got something on the front of the lens, and I do clean them when I come back because obviously the salt can, if it dries, it can scratch them. Plus you get horrible marks on them. My own camera and the tripod, I do try and wash off because again, salt is not great in tripod legs. Tripods don't last me probably as long as they last my brother who doesn't live by the coast. But you kind of have to take that really. I mean, I stand in the water with my tripod, so it gets into the joints, and I do try and rinse it off. But you can't. it's not going to last forever. But I am very careful. I always have a camera strap on. If I'm changing a lens, I turn away from, I try not to change lenses on the beach, but sometimes you have to. And I have my bag open. I try and put the lens in and turn away from the wind and do it quickly. And I do as much as I can, really clean everything off when I come back.
Are you really fastidious with that?
I usually am, yeah, fairly good.
I think that's the key word. I usually
Yeah.
am. Because that is one of those things I thought I really should. I'll just put that there for a moment. But it does depend on the weather a bit.
Yeah, and I must admit, there are times when I've come back and my filters, they're not salty, but if it's been a bit of humidity, a bit streaky, and I think, oh yeah, I'll do that when I get back, and I forget, and I go out the next time, and oh no, I didn't clean them, and they're really grubby, and you can suddenly end up with a misty shot, and it's not misty at all. It's just your filters are absolutely filthy.
Yeah, it's noticeable. Sometimes you're at the coast, just for a walk or something, and when you get home, you really feel the need to wash your hands because they feel kind of grimy.
They do, yeah.
And basically you've got that sea salt film.
It's that salt. It just gets into everything, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. Right. Can I have your fourth number, please?
Number 8.
How much editing do you do, and what's your approach? Does it vary by subject?
I edit usually through Lightroom, and I suppose I don't do a huge amount. I would prefer to be out taking the photographs and sitting in front of the computer. So I use a straight shot. I don't do the multiple exposures, and I take it into Lightroom and I do, sort of the whites and the blacks.
Mm-hmm.
And if I feel it needs a bit of texture or whatever, I might do a little bit of localize with the brush and the masks, but I don't do an overall huge edit. And everything I do in very, very small increments and see if it makes any difference. Sometimes I'll whack it right up so you can see the effect, and then I'll bring it down as far as I possibly can. But it does tend to be very localized. Sometimes it's the white balance I might change as well. Particularly, I'm using a Fuji camera more at the moment because it's just lighter to take around. And I don't always like the way the white balance, just don't always like it. So I might have to tweak that, because I used to I have a Canon camera and I do love the Canon colours. And I do find I can achieve that just by slightly tweaking the white balance as well, making it bluer. But I try not to do a lot. And obviously any dust spots, of which there are probably quite a few.
What is your maximum number of dust spots that you'll clone out before you actually clean your sensor?
I haven't cleaned the sensor on my Fuji.
Oh, really?
I'm ashamed to admit that. No, I know. I'm putting it off. It's not so many dust spots I get. I get the hot pixels.
Oh.
Where I think the long exposures can sometimes do that, can't they? When you get
right. Yeah.
So I have to use the visualize spots thing so that I can actually see where they are, because sometimes they're so tiny, but they would show up in a print. You'd think that you'd got a little bit of the ink that dropped off or something, but it's not. They're the hot pixels, yeah.
Okay. All right. Could I have your penultimate number, please?
Number 9.
Ah, well, it follows nicely on, because what is your go-to camera and lens combination? And a few people ask that.
As I say, at the moment, I'm using the Fuji X-T5, and depending if I'm down on the beach shooting sort of a cloudscape or whatever, it'd probably be the 16-55.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm at the harbour, it's probably the 70-300. Those are. I don't actually. I do have a wide angle lens, but it's a prime lens, which I find really hard, not being brought up on film cameras. My brother laughs at me. I don't really have a wide angle other than this fixed lens now. So it is the 16-55. It's about the widest I go at the moment.
Okay. And you mentioned you've got a Canon camera. Do you still use that?
I do use it, and I took it out a few weeks ago, and it's a bit like when you change cars. When you stick the windscreen wipers on when you meant to put the indicators on. And normally the muscle memory is I can use those cameras in the dark, which you need to, but I need to get back out with the Canon because I've forgotten where things are. But as I say, for walking around because it's the old, it's the 5DSR, which is really heavy to walk about.
Mhm.
So if I'm going out for the day, I do tend to take the Fuji. It's just better on my back, really.
Yeah. Okay. And so you would use the Canon for what, if you've got a specific shot in mind, maybe you're going to use a tripod?
Yeah, well, I use a tripod 99.9% of the time anyway.
Okay.
And I use the Canon if I'm going down to do cloudscapes. I find I do like it for that. But my Fuji, because of course it gives me the extra reach as well, because it's a crop sensor. So for the harbour shots, that's quite helpful. But and the Canon I use if I'm photographing like my husband's work or artist's work. I don't know why. I just find the colours easier to get right.
Okay. Could I have your final number, please?
Number 10.
This is an interesting one. Is your current business and lifestyle what you visualised back when you first became a professional photographer? And I know it was more of a transition, but there was a point at which you kind of realised that you're a photographer. And has it been more of a natural development? That question's from Philippa.
Yeah. I mean, it has been more of a natural development, but I guess now I'm in a position to think, okay, I think this works well for me, so I'd like to do more of that. Like, having the exhibitions or collaborations with other artists, that works well for me. So it's not anything I envisaged, as I said before, when I first gave up the teaching job, but I think now I am able to work out what might work well and what might be the next path for me.
Great. Well, Lucie, thank you so much for answering all those questions. It's been really wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Great. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the She Clicks Women in Photography podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Special thanks to everyone who sent in a question. You'll find links to Lucie's website and social media channels in the show notes. I'll be back with another episode soon, so please subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform and tell all your friends and followers about it. You'll also find She Clicks on Facebook, X, Instagram and YouTube if you search for She Clicks Net. So until next time, enjoy your photography.